Good morning, all you fabulous, beautiful people out there on LinkedIn and the internet. We, the Cyber Queens, are back after a 2-week hiatus, sort of. We're missing Erica this week because she's traveling back from a fitness event with her boyfriend. He did win, so good job.
Woo!
Good job to Brad. So we will have her back next week. So we are, of course, your Cyber Queens. We are your hosts. We're missing Erica. I'm Meryl, resident ethical hacker, pen test ninja, and offensive security expert, and I'm joined by Amber.
Yeah, Amber DeVilbus. I'm an account director at Evotech, and many other things along with Meryl and Erica.
Yeah, many other things in between. We should probably start saying all the things that we do so people realize
all of the things.
We're in multiple.
The list goes on together. And on. So, exactly.
Yes. So today's topic is honest. It's going to be a very honest topic. As you all have probably noticed, the Cyber Queens haven't posted a new episode in a week or two. And that is because, oh goodness, I feel like we just hit that mid-year slump. You know, I feel like the year came out strong. We're like, it's a new year. We've all got all this renewed energy. RSA happened. And since then it's been a blur, like since April.
I know. It's like catching up on all the things I told myself and promised other people I'd get done. And I'm like, okay, great.
Yeah, that's all still coming.
Life one day at a time.
Yeah. And I realized it's not just us. And like, here's the thing. So when we started out this year, we had like 3 or 4 months of content planned out and like guests lined up and all these things. Like Meryl was doing a really good job having all of her CQP ducks in a row. But as the year
in a row, I like that.
Yeah, in a roll. They're rolling somewhere. They're not in a line anymore. They're running rampant. But as the year went on, it just kind of fell behind, and with work needs and like other things coming up, and like, gosh, the month of June, I was telling the queens, I was home maybe 9 days the month of June. In the month of June, I did 3 separate cons, which was crazy. And that killed me a little bit. So
your life is insane. I don't think there's anything you haven't done this year. So and that's coming from me, whose life is always insane.
I want to do less though. Like, I'm like, it's like, I love being all the places and seeing all the people and doing all the things, but oh gosh, am I really feeling that I'm 34? Because I feel like I'm 50 and I feel like this year has aged me significantly.
100%. Let's talk about that. Yeah. I'm like going to get my, my grays touched up like once a month now. That's how much it is. Right. But that's what we deal with in this day and age. Especially us.
Had to flop mine.
Three people that just do not stop doing things. I think Eric got a whole company now, and it's
Erica's
crazy.
Like, in all this non-existent free time, I'm going to start a company. And we're like, damn. And then like Amber and all of her non-existent free time is kicking off a brand new type of event. And I'm like, why do we do this to ourselves? I don't understand. I don't know why we do this to ourselves. But it's not just us. I've seen it from a lot of my friends and coworkers lately. People posting up that like, it's been like a month and a half and like I've been struggling and I'm not doing okay. And I know that all these things are falling off and like you're used to seeing me post consistently and do all these things. But like, it's hard to keep up with that grind. It's like, it's almost like I didn't plan out content for 1 month and then 1 month became 2. And then it's like, if you take your finger off that ball, all the logistics that you need to pre-plan ahead of time get behind, and then it becomes reactionary. Then it's the Cyber Queens texting each other Thursday night or Friday morning if we're podcasting or not what the topic is.
I know. Yeah. It's crazy. But I mean, burnout is so real. I think that's, the topic of today and kind of how that ties into. And I feel like as moms, it adds a whole nother level, right? So anybody that's a parent, I mean, obviously you have your day job, non-stop job ever, whether you're a mom or a dad, right? And so I feel like just tying that all in too, because especially for those schedules, right? My kid is up at like, I don't know, 5 whenever the sun comes up. And I'm like, just like 2 more hours, 1 more hour, please. I'm like, this is like the I get to recharge. But
I'm like, go put on a movie. I'm like, go put on a movie and I'll be with you shortly. Your ticket will be the next ticket that we will take care of. No, it's true. And it just kind of, I feel like it's going around. It's important that we revisit this topic because it feels like it's going around. It feels like it's not just the queens. It feels like it's everybody. And a lot of our friends are just like us. We tend to associate with people who are go-getters just like us and have their hands in multiple things and stuff, but it just feels like it's really hitting everybody pretty hard. And so our friend Danny Wolf posted up this great post the other day about some things she wrote out for herself that she tries to read to herself to remind herself that it's okay. It's okay if she takes some time. It's okay if things don't get posted for a week or two. It's okay. And like, I have been guilting myself super hard. And I know Erica's been freaking out too. We're like, the podcast is dying. And I'm like, it's probably not. Things are probably fine.
Oh yeah.
But it does.
No, and I loved her posts. I love honest posts like that because it's so important to, I mean, this time I remember, as we always talk about my parents, right? They're like, just stop it, stop making waves. Right. But there were so many times I post something, I'm like, I'm just going to be real because I'm pretty sure like 80% of people that are following me for that, right? The realness of it and the thing is perfect and scripted and wonderful and you're always, energetic. Like sometimes it just sucks, right? And so it's important to talk about that and make sure that we're all venting to each other because we all need someone. So
we do.
I love that she did that.
Yeah. And I, me, I'm a big fan of make your mess your message. Like if you're going through it, just say you're going through it. And like we do sometimes, we do. And, we love providing this content. We love hosting this podcast. We love encouraging and inspiring and giving our points of view. But it's so hard because it is a secondary function for us to sometimes say like, I only have so many hours in the day. Which projects do those hours get spent on? And of course, our families and our jobs have to come first. But then let's talk about if you do try to walk away, you do try to have some self-care, you do book the PTO that first you booked and then you canceled and then you retyped out, then you canceled, then you deleted it. And you're like, I don't need PTO. I'll probably be fine on Monday. I just need the weekend. That's what I need.
There's no such thing, especially on this side, right? I mean, there is such a thing. I rarely take PTO because when I take PTO, I take PTO. Okay, so that has never been an issue for me on that one. There are times where I'm like, okay, I'll be on standby just in case, right? Like if I have some big deal going through or if I can hear from me, then sure. But usually if I take PTO, it's around the holidays, which is probably why I'm burned out all the time. But yeah, I totally feel you. When I am on PTO, there's always like that lingering almost fear of like, well, if right? Like I got to keep this next to me all the time because what if something happens and I need to be available? And then you just kind of don't really ever check out mentally. So it's important to do those things.
And I think that our industry is one of the few industries that will let you do that. But I guess it kind of depends on your role. Because if you're like the stock manager and you try and go on vacation and like stuff hits the fan at 3 a.m, they kind of still expect you to like pick up your phone and like direct people from afar. 100%. I don't know. It's weird. But I'll have to say, I took time off recently to go get married.
Yes, congratulations. Those photos are insane. Way.
Oh, I'm so excited for the rest.
A gorgeous couple.
So excited for them.
Yes.
I definitely had a vision. But like that's the thing is I was like keeping up with work. We had just moved at the beginning of June and then all of those crazy cons and then the podcast and then planning the wedding at the same time. And I was like, everything is on fire.
Yeah. I can't even imagine. I don't know how you did that. Like most people just planning a wedding is unbearable. God, unbearable. You did that. And then you also kept up with like you're just like constantly getting awards and you're constantly traveling. I'm like, how is she doing this? Incredible.
I stopped sleeping and that was not good.
There's that.
Good. But I started to have that FOMO. Like I was supposed to be taking a week off to focus on these plans I had been planning and execute them and spend time with my friends and family. Like we did a very small elopement. I didn't even do a big wedding. It was like 8 people, including us, the couple. And still it was stressful. Still it was like, we got to go grocery shopping and get all the supplies and get the Airbnb booked and like make sure everyone has directions and people have airport pickups. And so it was just bonkers. But that whole time I was still like, oh, I wonder if I should check Slack. I wonder if, I got that email yet. I wonder if they're waiting on me. And like, they know I'm on PTO, right? It's been on the books for a minute. The whole company knows, my very small company, the whole company knows. And I still felt that anxiety to like, I'm still here though, if you need me. And they're like, 100%. Why though? Like, go get married. And I'm like, okay.
Well, what if it all falls apart? Yeah, I know. That's the feeling with everything, right? And that's kind of like, I mean, even just as a parent, I find a lot of times, like when my son isn't with me and he's with his dad, I'm glued to my phone, right? There's no such thing as I'm just going to go and just take time for me, because of course that would be the one time where it's like, hey, we need you here right now. Right. So, and that's that lingering anxiety. And so that's what I mean. I just feel like so many of us, are going through all of this stuff all the time. And it's not necessarily, just the moms of the force. I know that that's what we're here to talk about, but I have friends, right now that are dads whose kids just moved out of the house and now they're empty nesters and they're still stressed all the time. They're like, well, now I'm trying to fill all my time with new things to do because what will I do now? Right. And so it's like, you enjoy it. That's what you do. You just try to enjoy the free time you maybe have for just a small amount more. So, but yeah, you're right. It's like that A-type go-getter mindset where you just can't be okay just being, right? So,
well, yeah, and it's true. And it's like, I can take PTO from my W-2 job, but I can't take PTO from like all these other things that I feel so bad or like falling behind. And like, it's like, I missed a CFP. Like last October, I missed a major CFP I wanted to submit to because it was like due on Halloween when I was taking my kids trick-or-treating. And I was like,
yeah.
But then I was like, do I really need one more speaking opportunity? Probably that's a good thing. Probably.
That's okay. You can take all of mine. Next time you want to take on speaking opportunities, you can just take one from mine.
Just kidding. No. The goal is Meryl's supposed to be doing less, Amber.
Well, that's fine. Amber also needs to be doing less. So there we go.
Yeah, we both. I think we both do recognize that like we do need to start saying no to more things and we do need to do a little less. And like I am all for visibility and getting your brand out there and giving back. Most of the speaking opportunities I do are not paid. And I have to get there on my own dime as well. So, my company, gracefully, if I'm speaking on our behalf, helps me get there. But like, it really has become the kind of situation where it's so like, I'll still be in Slack, even though it says PTO right next to my name. And people are like, what are you doing here? Like, and I feel like this happened because my wife, she works in a different industry. She works in production, like manufacturing. And they literally wait for her to go on PTO, which she never takes either, to say, oh, this order didn't come in. Oh, this supply is running low. And that's your fault. That's your job. You should have planned for that. So she is spending all of PTO,
oh my gosh,
putting out fires and like calling her boss and saying, I had that order in. If it didn't show up, I'm sorry. But like, I did plan for that thing. And I'm like, that's going to happen to me. That's going to happen to me. That's going to happen to me. The second I step out, like my job is going to be.
Yeah, no kidding. That's crazy though. See, and there's so much more to that. I feel like that we could dive into, right? I don't know. I just feel like there's a healthy balance too, right? Because it's all about having like the resource to backfill you while you're on PTO. I'm a firm believer in this because PTO is just that, right? It's time away. So that kind of makes me angry for her. But regardless, I'll just keep those thoughts to myself for now. But yeah, well, and the funny thing is, I was actually thinking about this, right? When we were talking about this topic, is like fear of missing out almost at life situations, right? Because you're so busy working. Like you have no idea the amount of guilt that I had most of the second half of last year when I was working on, getting Teach Kids Tech up to speed. And I was, I was just running myself too thin. I was doing, sitting on the board at LEet, Women in Security. And then I was trying to come on here and sadly failing to make it certain times. Right. And then I was trying to build that nonprofit and switching jobs. And there were so many times where I would sit there and I'd be like, hey, sweetie, not now. Mommy's working. Hold on. I'll be right there. Right. And one thing led to another. And you're like, no, I'm missing out. I'm missing out on this. Right. So I think the FOMO kind of goes both ways too.
It does. And like, that's the FOMO we should be talking about. Like, and I do that same thing. Like, they'll be like, can you play with me? I'm like, yes, right after this meeting. And then I have to send an email. And then it's like, oh, I have to check on something. And then it's like, hey, can you huddle about that real quick? And then like 20 minutes later, they're like, oh, are you done yet? And I'm like, no, I'm so sorry. Oh my God. And I know I'm doing this to better your life, which you don't understand. But like, that's the kind of FOMO we should focus on. Like, we shouldn't be worried about when we're trying to savor those moments, the FOMO of what we're missing out on at work.
Right.
But I'm having trouble segregating that. I need to put them on VLANs and I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to stop the communication between those two.
Yeah. And it's a tough one. Right. And I think, with everything that you're doing and you've accomplished, like the tough part, and this kind of goes into my other brain of psychology. Right. And you think about it with like, people who have kind of stronger addictions, that what you're doing isn't necessarily the best, but because you're also getting rewarded, like, look at you have like 50 different awards. You're going and speaking at all these events. So it's like, it's almost like encouraging your brain and like sending that dopamine being like, this is good. Keep doing this, keep doing more of this. Right. And so it's kind of hard to like switch that off in a way, right? It becomes almost like addictive, like to work. Yeah.
No, you're right. Like, it's like, I know I should say no to more. I know I should do less. And like, but it's like, but also it's working. Like, and And I always said, like, you know, I made a lot of progress professionally very quickly. It's very unheard of for people in tech to do what I've done. Typically you'll see careers more like Amber's, where she's been in here for like a decade now. You've been working in tech, like overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little bit
Yeah.
over, but yeah.
So, and I said I wanted to do it that way because I wanted to hustle for like a really small period of time. Like I wanted to have it be a lot of work and lots of nights and weekends and all that for a small amount of time as possible to like enjoy like getting to a point where I don't have to work as hard for longer. But like 4 years later, I'm still here. And I'm like, why am I still doing this? Like I probably don't have to. And I'm kind of losing my passion for it, to be honest. Like it's been so much that like I didn't drink from one fire hose. I drink from a particle accelerator. It feels like it's starting to pile on and be a little too much. So I am at the point where I need to recognize where I'm going to start sacrificing quality over quantity. And like, you know, we are throwing things together last minute. And I hate being in that. I hate being reactive, whether it's security or my life. I hate being reactive. I like being planned out. I like having a plan. I like knowing where we're going and what we're doing every day. And I feel like I'm losing grips on that reality almost. Like the Hermione in me is losing her marbles right now.
I know, right? And it's so funny you say that because when I first met you and I first had a chance to talk to you and we got all excited because I was joining the podcast and you were coming on as COO at Teach Kids Tech, it was kind of like, it almost like was the roles were flipped, right? So I was all over the place. I was like, please, somebody help me. Erica was like, you need somebody. You need Meryl. I'm like, oh my gosh. And you sat down with me and you're like, okay, where do you want this to be in a year? Where do we want to be in a year, right? Where do we want to be in 5 years? And that was the kind of strategy session with me that I needed. And now it's like, hey, who's going to do that strategy session if Meryl's not doing it for herself now, right? So that's kind of the thing is like, how do you get to a point where you do feel burned out, where you feel like you can kind of step away? Because I think the biggest thing with burnout that sucks, and I've seen this, right? I've worked in a SOC before. We had some of the best analysts, right? I've watched them get up and literally quit. They had enough in the middle of a client call, in the middle of whatever. They would get up and they would literally leave because it was just so mentally draining and taxing. They were always being worked, like overworked, and then never getting recognition and always like, what's next? What's next? Where's more, right? What more can I squeeze out of you, kind of thing.
Right.
And so I feel like when you get to that point, like what in your experience, right? When you've gotten to that point before, what kind of things did you just absolutely have to set a boundary on? Like, hey, this is what I have to do in order to prevent from rage quitting, right? So, and burnout. Like what's like how do you start to notice that you're getting to that point? And then what do you usually do to counteract it?
I noticed that like I don't get excited anymore. So when I start a new project or a new initiative, like when I started Cyber Queens, like this is going to be so great. I'm so excited. And then, you know, that kind of got onto autopilot and it was okay on autopilot because I had everything planned out. And I was like, I have more time. What can I do next? And I was like, Teach Kids Tech. This gets me really excited. And, but you know, like I realize that I will wake up to start my day and I'm just like, oh, what needs my attention first? Instead of being like, I am so excited to come in and accomplish goals and kick it, like kick butt and like make all these things happen in all these places. Like I just start to dread it. And I'm like, I love the work that I do. All of my passions, like every project I accept has to align passion wise or I don't accept it. Cause I like, then I'm scaling, kind of building on what I've already got. I'm not starting something new. And when I start to dread it, when I start to see it as work and not fulfilling myself, then I get concerned and I'm like, oh no. As far as setting a boundary to combat that, travel goes first. Like I'm like, you know, Hacker Summer Camp is coming up and that's really important because I've got several speaking opportunities there, quite a few representing Acquia and then quite a few, you know, possibly accepting another award. One for the Queens. We're doing a podcasting panel, which I'll talk about more at the end. So it's important that I be there because there's like 6 times the amount of ROI I'm going to get on that trip. But a company offsite backs right up against that the first week of September. And I'm like, I would love to be there. I'd love to see all my coworkers in person. I would love to. But like really all we do is like, you know, sit together in the meeting, have co-working time, spend time with each other and stuff. But like, I might have to like say no. Like it's just been too much travel. And every single time I travel, by the way, none of you know this about me, I get major travel anxiety. I hate being on a plane with every fiber of of my being. You can ask
Oh,
my life.
wow.
I
I
hate
did
it.
not know that. We're all learning together today.
The plane moves a little bit. I'm like, we just died. We're dying. The plane is going down. Everything is bad. Like, I have to sit where I can see a flight attendant to know if, like, are they concerned? And they're like,
yeah. They're always like that. They're
like,
the best
I'm like,
people
okay.
under pressure.
I'm like, everything is fine. Everything is fine. So, but no, so it's a lot of anxiety for me. I generally have I have an autoimmune condition. It usually flares that up and I have an attack of some kind. So for me, travel has to be the first thing to go. I'm not so great at sending boundaries in my personal life. I'm really not. Please don't take that example from me.
Right. Well, I mean, I get it. That's kind of how I am too. That's why I'm part of like 6 things, because I'm like, sure, I'll do that with you guys. That's great. And then I'm like, where do I find time to do this and be a person? So yeah.
You know what I just realized? That's probably what I do. When I start feeling burnout, I just seek a new project to fire me back up. And I just ignore how I feel with like the Band-Aid of another project and more passion.
It's so true. Well, and that's what I was going to say. Like for me, I think the number one way to tell if Amber is burned out is if the creativity is just dead, right? Because all the time, all I'm trying to do is create new things, whether it's, at my current job and trying to create new presentations and, kind of infographics to show things in a different way than we've ever done. Or if it's like, with Teach Kids Tech, the book that I promised everybody that definitely will not be done by the end of this year, right? Those are things where it's like, hey, when I have so much going on and I'm trying to like, navigate all of these different challenges, it leaves me no time. Like they say that your creativity is the best when you have nothing else to think about, right? Like when and sometimes that's not true. I agree and disagree with that statement a little bit, because I think that one conversation will lead to a different thought process and lead me to different, creative outlets. And that's just how I am. But for a lot of people, and what I've noticed about myself as well, is when it gets to be too many different outlets and verticals, I just shut down. And then it's like, my brain's like, nope, we are not doing anything creative. You're lucky if you make it out of bed today. Right. So I think for me, that's like one of the biggest things is my creativity gone? Yes. Cool. How can I like rewire, unplug, get, connected back with my own self and think about things in the weird, quirky, creative ways I do so that I can come back fully strong and ready to take on everything. And then when I do that, then I'm like, woo, I took a little break and here we go. Let's do 5 more projects again, So that's the problem. That's the problem.
Your problem is you don't learn from your cycle. You're just like, I feel better. I'm happy to repeat the cycle.
I'm like, what cycle?
Do it again.
Here we go. Yeah, exactly.
I think Erica and I realized this weekend we're on a cycle where about every 6 months we have a complete mental breakdown on each other and we're mortal enemies. and then an hour later, literally not an hour later, we're back to being best friends. We're like, I love you too. And I'm like, I think this is just like, as tensions build and stress builds, we just got to get it all out and then we feel better. But I will say, I don't know how to step away and relax. Like I don't know how to re-energize myself sometimes. Someone just asked what's a great way to recover from like dealing with multiple cyber incidents. And I was like, completely unplug, analog, in the woods, like where no one can get to you and you couldn't be involved if you wanted to. Do that.
Right.
My dad started doing that when I was little. We started taking cruises for family vacations because
I love that.
He is an automations engineer, right? So he works with SCADA systems and like they would not respect it so much that he was like, I'm out to sea. You can't find me out to sea. There's no signal out there. And when he got back from one, they actually told him, we actually shipped to shore three Carnival ships looking for you and we couldn't find you and we gave up. But they tried.
Oh my gosh.
Very hard.
Gosh. That's crazy.
Really
oh my goodness. Well, that, and it's funny because like all the engineers, like I don't know any salesperson that would sit up here and publicly state like, oh, I love taking vacation. Not one single one of them will. But it's funny because on the other side, my former life, right, sales engineering, all of the best engineers, the ones that were called in and just always had like quadruple bookings on the calendar during their average workday, would all be the ones that are like, I'm going off the grid, remote. No one's getting a hold of me for like a solid week and a half. Like, do not, if something happens, it happens. Good luck. Hopefully you guys have something else in place, right? There are so many of those, and they're the sanest people I know. And I think it's because they do that every once in a while, right? And then you've got like Then I go over to sales and I'm like, oh, I wish I could take a break. I'm just going to rest my head on my pillow and oh, nope, there we go. Just like that. There's another email that I have to respond to right now.
Right
And
now.
so, and I've been, I don't know, I've been totally guilty of all of this, as you know. So that's, I mean, think about it if we want to be real on this show, right? Let's talk about Teach Kids Tech and how 100% of the roadblocks have been Amber, right? Because for a long time I was like, hey, well, hold on. I'm a control freak. Nobody do things without me, but also I can't do things right now because I'm doing all these things. So just hold on, right? And so it kind of stayed there for a while, and now we're finally getting it back off the ground and moving forward, even though we're all going through the craziest things. I mean, for goodness sakes, you got married and had, your 50 million Academy Award ceremony. Wow.
I know.
And here we still are, right? We're like, all right, let's push forward. Let's get connected with new people. And you've been doing a killer job of that. And so is Erica. And she's starting her own company, for God's sakes, and it's a whole thing. So it just goes to show that sometimes, like, even just a tiny little bit of a break can kind of help you. What is the word? What's the word? Re-energize, everything.
Prioritize, reinvigorate.
There you go. Just everything, just up yourself kind of. So
I will say, given that we do believe in radical transparency and, this is a podcast with all of our, closest best friends in cyber. We did take a point. We're really good at giving each other grace because we are partners in multiple businesses together, right? We have Teach Kids Tech. We have the Cyber Queens. Erica wants us all to come work for her new company. And I'm like, I think maybe we have enough businesses together, but maybe we need more. Who knows? We'll find out. But all these things did happen at once. And I keep referring to RSA as the catalyst, but it kind of was, because that was when con season picked up for me. And as we all know, I go full frontal with that. Amber got a new job and had to orient to that. And again, we have to provide value to our jobs before we can focus on these, because that's the cup that keeps our families fed and taken care of. And we will not have time or creativity that we love if we can't take care of the thing we need. So, we all tech fell off and Cyber Queen started becoming more sporadic and we're on this week, we're off this week, we're on this week. And today's episode, I was like, I'm pretty sure we're not doing an episode because I texted the queens about it yesterday, but we didn't really send. And this morning at 9:07, Amber's like, so are we an episode? And I'm like, I guess we are. I was like,
I know, right? Me, little old me, the one that never shows up. I'm like, let's do it.
I was like, we should. You're right. I was like, I really don't want to go a third week, so we really need to. So I was like, this is just our us coming and out and saying that it affects us all in multiple ways. It affects your family, it affects your work, it affects your extracurriculars, and it's rough. But we go through it too. And I know I make it look easy. I know it looks like I'm just out there slaying it, speaking all the time and winning all these awards. And I'm sure it looks so effervescent, but it is not. I am like a little ball of anxious attachment struggle over here.
Anxious attachment. Love it. Totally true for me.
So we just want you all to know that. We want you all to know that we deal with it too. It's not as easy as it seems. You see the tiny iceberg at the top and none of all that chaos that goes into it underneath. So don't feel bad out there. If you've been wanting to write a book, start a podcast, write a blog even, and you just can't seem to start, that's okay. We've been there. And we're coming back. We're coming back in the second quarter. Come back, kids. So it's a quarter, right? It's called a quarter, second half. Half. Right. Coming back in this. Meryl knows a sports thing. No,
semi-annual.
No, I don't. But anyway, so I just think it's important that we touch on this. And again, we have so many friends out there making vulnerable posts talking about it. If you're going through it, honestly, that's a great piece. That's a great post to make. So many people will relate to where you're coming from and help bolster you up and build you up. And sometimes I need my network to say, you're still doing a good job, Meryl. We still admire you. You're doing what you can. We all recognize that. I need that sometimes. I won't lie. I don't know. What about you? What helps? What helps reaffirm to you that you haven't completely failed and all these things that you started just perished and died?
Oh, well, I feel that often. I think having a good support system is great. I mean, here's how bad it is sometimes. Yesterday, I made this post on LinkedIn and it wasn't like a normal post. It wasn't a video. It wasn't something funny. It wasn't whatever. It was just me having this little mini rant about some sign I saw at a pharmacy drive-through. And I remember sitting there and I posted, and I was like, yeah, this is totally people are going to love this and they're going to agree with me, And I posted it. And I remember an hour later, I logged back in. I'm like, nobody's even liked it. And there's been 1 billion views on this and nobody cares. Am I in the wrong? And you start to question yourself. And I do that with a lot of things. And so I feel like a lot of us especially content creators, we rely a little too heavily on that feedback. But I will say that having, for example, when I wanted to write my book, I was feeling absolutely unmotivated. When I wrote The Little Cyber Engineer, I would draw like a picture of the cover and I'm like, hopefully this will help me get through the rest of it, right? Nobody knows this, but I actually drew that book before I wrote that book, right? Which was just ass backwards, but whatever, it is what it is. So my point is I kept drawing thinking like, oh, it'll come to me. And it just didn't, right? And then I put it out on LinkedIn, did the thing that I would never recommend, right? Because I lit the fire under my own bum on that one. But I was like, hey, I'm going to make a book. And so many people were like, oh my gosh, can't wait for it to come out. This is going to be incredible. And it's like those little words of affirmation that you're like, oh shit. Now there's accountability. Now I have to get this done. And it kind of like almost like forces you, not in a burnout way, but kind of forces you to think differently because you're thinking a little bit quicker than you normally would. So sometimes if you get what you want to do and you just put it out into the world and get feelers and vibes for it, you'll actually see, hey, there's actually a big need for this. Or, hey, these people seem to like this idea. Maybe they're onto something and so am I. I'm going to continue to work on it. So that's something that I've done. I mean, I wouldn't recommend half of the things that I've done because I do them completely backwards and it makes no sense to anybody, which is why I have Meryl. So I would take Meryl's advice.
No, I'm actually an advocate for that. I love how Amber and I align because we're disruptors. We both do things differently, right? So I'm always a fan of backwards planning. I'm a fan of get started imperfectly, just get started at all. And like sometimes it does take visualizing it and getting it out there before you're like, now I can understand how I want the story to evolve. Because I can see it. Like you do need to see it. That's probably your process. And if that works for you, don't fix the wheel that's not broken. You just keep chugging along. I'm not here. Yeah.
Not broken.
But it's moving. The wheel is moving. So it's doing its job as a wheel. Yeah. But what I will say is that sometimes like people tend to get lost in the mix. They tend to get like deterred from their original mission, right? So if you wanted to write a book on this and you came to me, you're like, look, I did this and it was not what your original product, I would be, this is great. This is a great product, but it missed your original mark in these ways. Now, if you're okay with that, then cool. But if you wanted to speak to this, you need to go back and do it again. I used to do that as a writing tutor. So I used to be a writing tutor at UCSD because like I used to be so good at writing papers. I could hammer them out, but it was like a side business I had. Like I'd write people's papers for grades.
Yeah, and GPT.
yeah, basically. And they would bring to me these papers sometimes when they really tried, and I'd look at their thesis, right? And then I'd read their paper and I'd say, this is a great paper. Yeah, it's well structured, it's well researched, your commentary is insightful, it's concise, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't answer the prompt at all. What? Yeah, you answered a completely different prompt. That's not what this was asking you at all. So this is a wonderful paper that will not get you any points on this assignment because you didn't do the assignment.
Right.
And they're like, oh, no, I just went down and it evolved. I see that, but you need to go back and rework it. Or again, your professor is not going to care. They just know that I asked you a thesis and you didn't answer the thesis.
Right.
So sometimes projects do that, right? Like you start out with a goal and as you move along, you realize you've like waned or like zigged over here and you need to zag back. So I'm good at telling people when they need to zag back, but I'm not good at telling myself when I need to zag back. That's what I rely on people like Amber and Erica for. They're like,
same.
You know, we see you doing this and we just wonder if you need to. And I'm like, yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
100%. And that's probably what I know we usually save this for the end or whatever, but I would strongly urge people to not, because like one of the things I wish I could go back and tell myself, those little statements back in the day. If I could go back in the day and tell myself anything, it would just be to go a little bit easier on yourself, because I feel like I was nobody judged me harder than I did. Right. And so I was like setting these goals and hoping to achieve all of these things in a certain time. And I didn't. And I remember I felt like a failure and I felt like, well, I wasted all this time away from my son and I have nothing to show for it because that didn't work out. And so now I feel even worse and I'm just going to be down on myself. So I feel like if you just give yourself the space to be like, hey, I want to create this. Maybe it doesn't happen right this second, but I know that eventually I want to create this. So we're all going to sign up for Meryl's boot camp where she reminds us every day, like, hey, that's not what you said you wanted to do. Right. But I do think it's important to take time to really think like, what are your priorities? I actually am with someone now who is very special and important to me and has taught me this new idea of you can actually choose what happens in your life, right? You actually get to choose what you do with your time. And if you don't want to do it, why would you do it? I'm like, holy crap, that's a really easy way to ask that question. And the answer is, I don't know, right? I don't know why I'm doing it. And I think if you figure out like what your values are and where you want to get to, that kind of helps you with the, are you okay with it question? Like, here was what your goal was. Are you okay with it being this now? Right? Because for me, I'm a big fan of change. I think things evolve as they need to. Maybe something that you had initially planned at the beginning of the year no longer fits that because you're no longer there at that point in your life. So, I mean, I think rolling with the punches, but definitely having a plan and a goal of what you want to do and where you want to be.
And you know what? Some plans don't. Say Amber, you froze. I don't want to talk over you. Some plans don't work. I am a fan of two additives that kind of work opposite but together at the same time, which is that no plan survives first contact with the enemy, right? I can plan and plan and plan all day. Plans sometimes fall apart, but I'm okay with that because someone else said that I find plans to be useless but planning to be indispensable. So I don't make a plan and stick to it finitely and say if it doesn't go this way it's all gone to hell. What I do is say I have given myself enough flexible pivot points along the way that if it does come up here and then down here and then over here, I've hopefully accounted for enough of that it's not that bad and we can recover or we can pivot.
Right. I love that.
That's what I try to do. That's why I try to have like extra topics lined up that aren't reliant on all three of us or on a guest or things like that. You know, it manifests in a number of ways. The thing that I will say is that I have a really hard time like with my own mentality sometimes. Like I was having a conversation with someone yesterday and I was like, I feel stuck. I'm stuck in one particular place personally right now. And I was like, I feel stuck. I feel like my hands are tied. I feel like I don't know what to do to advance. I feel like I'm the kind of person who doesn't meet walls like this. I don't get stuck. How did I get stuck? And they're like, you're not stuck. You're only stuck because you're telling yourself you're stuck. Like, just if like you need to change your perspective on the situation and maybe like some new creative solution will manifest itself. And I'm like, that feels stupid, but I'll try it, you know, like.
I mean, look at it though. True. Sometimes the things that are stupid end up being the things that are amazing, right? And it's the only thing that's going to get us out of there because a different mindset changes everything. I totally agree with you. I actually saw this quote because you know me, you guys all know me. I save probably half of all of the photos on my phone are just quotes that I'm like, oh, I love that. I'm going to save it and use it one day. But one of them that I just saw like 2 days ago, which kind of speaks to what you were saying, right, was try not to wish for an easier life. Wish for the strength and the wherewithal to understand every situation as it comes to you, no matter how hard it is, right? So don't wish for less difficult times. Wish for yourself the ability to get through those, no matter how difficult or easy they are, right? So I think that's a huge one too, and that's something I love to live by because life is so difficult all the time, right? There's always something, whether it's work or personal or being a mom or trying to do all this other stuff, like. There's never a day where I'm like, wow, nothing bad happened today. This is fantastic. What an amazing 100% day, right? There's always something. So I think maybe it's just me. I don't know, but that's my life. So
I've never had one of those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do those exist?
Explains the burnout too. No, but I just think that that's really important to kind of understand that there will be challenges and you will be able to, you know, inevitably I don't know anybody. I mean, I maybe know like, probably through a third party. I know one person that has like had a plan for themselves and 5 years later is just doing that plan. You know what I mean? And nobody knows this better than moms and dads, right? It's like our kids are like, I want to be an astronaut, you know, and I want to do all this stuff. And then the next day they're like, no, I'm just going to go be a chef. Right. And it's just like, but the plan was this, right? And it's like, nobody sticks with that. Change is inevitable. It's the only thing that is constant. So I don't know.
It's true. And we could have all the greatest plans in the world for like family photos, for instance. And then they're, you know, tick that you've got them in an outfit they don't want to wear because they want to wear their cowboy costume, not the suit that you picked out. Tick that they're out in the hot sun. They don't care about your expensive photographer that you paid. They're just not happy to be there. And you're like, how do we recover
just
this?
Pivot, evolve and pivot all the time.
Pivot. So. Fans will get the reference. It's true. And, you know, I was someone who had a very rigid plan. I'd actually just discussed this recently with a friend of mine, Chris Cochran. I had a very rigid plan for my life until I turned about 22 and I followed it to a freaking T, man. I followed that plan so flawlessly. And then when I hit 22, met a major obstacle and had to figure out something new. And I almost crumbled. I almost gave up on life, literally almost gave up. And I was like, there's no recovering from this. I'm too smart for this. People expected more from me. I'm more capable than this. This is my fault. And I learned what I was made of in that low moment, not because life was easy and I followed my plan to a T and everything went fine, but because I was met with adversity and I had to figure out how I was going to get my life back on track, how I was going to pull myself up and figure it out.
100%.
You know, did I want this to be my last moment, or was it going to push on like we did today? Yeah. We're like, we're going to push on.
There is no giving up, right?
Onward.
There is none. There's no giving up. There's just pivoting, right?
Yeah. There's no crying in baseball, and failure's not enough.
Exactly. There you go.
But it's true. It's especially true in cyber folks. Cyber folks have a really hard time stepping away, and you know, because we're entrusted with our org security, and it's hard for us to trust that to anyone else, right? So
100%.
It's rough. It's rough. I know Amber and I kind of gave final takeaways already. We got to wrap this episode, but the last thing I will say, and I'm curious for your take on this, Amber. At RSA, my new friend Stepan, he stopped and asked me, he was like, it seems like you do all these wonderful things. I just met you. I don't know. You seem super like accomplished. I'm like, thank you. He's like, how do you rest? I was like, what? He goes, how do you rest? How do you stop? I was like, yeah, I go get a pedicure. I blah, 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 blah. He goes, no, that's not the same.
Yeah.
How do you stop? And I was like, I don't stop. He's like, what about self-care? I'm like, don't say the self-care word to me one more time.
Self-care. Love it.
Self-care is, I feel like, something people have thrown at other people to say like you need to be doing this thing. You need to step away to get rest. You need to, and I'm like, first of all, I love the concept of rest. I realize I don't really do it. And
the concept of rest.
I love the conversation. Stepan and I had a great conversation, but I did realize that like, I see self-care as more work. I see that as having to plan out a period of time or have all my responsibilities taken care of. And I have to give continuity and give all the logistics and give all the planning and say, I will be back in exactly 2 hours. Why? 30 minutes to my massage, 1 hour massage, 10 minutes, 50 minutes, 10 minutes to get dressed, 30 minutes to drive back. And then at 2 hours and 1 minute, people are like, where are you? Are you on your way? Are you delayed?
Yeah.
And I'm like, taking that time off doesn't make me feel better. It stresses me out.
Yeah. Cause then it's all this stuff we catch up on.
Yeah, I'm not enjoying myself. So for me, self-care just means doing what makes you feel better. For me, that's making lists. It's quantifying, wrangling all the cats, identifying them all, making a list on what needs to be done and planning that stuff out. And then I feel better. I'm like,
there you go. There you go.
But it's not going and getting a massage or taking a vacation. That stresses me out more sometimes, actually.
Right, because then you have to plan around
what is it for you?
Oh, God. For me,
So what is it for you?
I love zoning out, and I don't know. So nobody on here, I don't think, really knows this, minus Erica if she's still watching. But I used to do a lot of like house projects, and I used to love like gardening and doing all that stuff. So I'll do something that literally takes me away from anything next to a screen. But I'm also guilty of just watching Netflix for like 3 days at a time. So, it depends. I'm like a very all or nothing kind of person. So when I do have like the motivation to do something, I really do something, right? So like I will completely just block it out of my mind and be like, all right, that was tech Amber. Now I'm going to go be like a home renovation Amber, right? And so like that's what I do. I just kind of, it's almost like, this sounds probably bad, and there's probably a way more graceful way to say this, but it's almost like I shapeshift into like different people, right? Like I'm like, okay, put that face on. Okay, now take that one off, and we're going to put this one on today, right? Because I just can't get out of, I'm not the person that can successfully be in multiple mindsets at a time. So that's probably my saving grace. Maybe that's my body's way of shutting down and being like, nope, we are not doing this anymore. We're moving on to the next thing, right? Because that's what is
your tech tank has run out. Time to switch to another one. You're like, okay.
100%, but you get it. Like for me, it's just kind of, it's almost like I need to get better about what that looks like for me. And because right now it's just like, okay, I've shut down, does not compute, nothing is moving forward. Good luck if I stand. Yeah.
Buffer overflow.
Yeah, exactly. If I stand back up again, great. Right. And I need to get better at preventing that from happening by doing more things for self-care. So.
Yeah, that's so great that you recognize that though. And honestly, as much as I'm a jack of all trades, like cyber-wise, Amber can like photography and paint and renovate her house. She's like a walking HGTV series, like by herself.
I'm the walking ADH squirrel. That's really what it is.
I have aspirations to be like you. And what that means is I make pin boards for jazzy things I'm going to accomplish that I never really accomplished. But I feel better having planned them out. Again, if I ever want to pick that up, I have a plan.
Yes. Thank you. That's my life now. So
yes. So I think that brings us to a good stopping point in today's episode. We just want you to know that you're not alone in your burnout. We want you to know that success isn't easy. it's easy, it's easy to get here and harder to stay here. We encourage you to still try your projects. We still love following and keeping up with encouraging every single one of you. We hope that you figure out what your burnout trigger is and what your solution is. We're still working on it. We're all works in progress. Some thanks for the queens. So we are still migrating to ITSP. We don't know how long. We will still be going live on LinkedIn, but all of our content will not be hosted on our podcast platforms. It will be hosted on ITSP's podcast platforms. So that announcement's coming soon. You'll have like a week or two's worth of notice before we make the migration, so you know where to find us. Other big news. The queens will be at Hacker Summer Camp, at least for a little bit, all three of us. We are giving the most ultimate of podcasting panels that you've ever seen. The Cyber Queens, Hacker Valley Media, Audience First, Bare Knuckles, Brass Taxes, and Miss Cybersecurity Woman of the World nominee herself, Alyssa Knight, will all be on one big panel discussing harnessing the power of your audience, building relationships, podcasting strategies, things like that. So if you guarantee you follow at least one of us, you're going to get some value. It's going to be the most like Avengers power packed panel I've ever been on. I'm really excited. Yes. So with that, that's all we've got for you this week. All three of us should be back next week. And Meryl's going to make a public promise. I'm going to have a content plan out to you guys soon. I'm going to make so many events in advance. It's going to be crazy. You're going to see Cyber Queens popping up like crazy because Meryl's just motivated to get everything planned out because that makes me feel better. So that's coming soon. We love you all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for your wonderful comments and engagement. We love you. We the queens love you. And we will see you same time, same place next week.
Perfect. Bye.
Bye.